Hey, thanks for watching. Really exciting videos that we're doing today. And in this section, we brought Dr. Scott's force plate out to measure what I think is one of the best drivers of the golf ball that I've ever been around as far as consistency, speed, and just like again and again and again, this guy hits just straight solid drives. So for people that don't know Scott, what is the swing catalyst and what are we measuring when we hit shots off of this?
This is our 3D motion plate. So it's a combination of a 3D force plate, which gives you the vertical forces, the horizontal side-to-side forces, and the twisting forces or the torque forces. And then we also have the pressures underneath his feet. So it's a combination of a pressure plate and a force plate, which pretty much measures everything that your feet are doing to the ground to see how you're creating that consistency and speed all at once.
Cool. So I know a lot of tour pros are using this or having their teachers use this or having you personally come out and see what they're doing into the ground. How are tour pros using this data?
I mean, to start with, I think a lot of people just try to archive their good swings. So when they were swinging really well, they'd archive it, and then if something went wrong, a lot of times, you know, if you play somewhere really windy, you might get a lot wider with your stance, which alters how your body moves, and this tells you exactly how wide your stance is, so you're like, oh, that's an easy, I can fix that. Or you could see maybe your torque went down or your vertical went down, and then it kind of directs your arrow a lot more how to get back to where you started. And then now that we really understand how this thing works, we can see if there's any mismatches in your swing. Okay. Because the pressure shift should match your dominant ground reaction force pattern, and I've yet to see a tour player where that doesn't match. So if you get a lot into your trail side, you're going to have to get horizontal force happening. If you stay very centered, you can do torque, and if you get on your lead side, you can do verticals. And you see a lot of amateurs where it doesn't match. They get way into their trail side, and their maximum force is a vertical, and that's where it's really hard to be consistent and create speed. I would imagine that you probably match up pretty well with what we've seen so far of your club delivery numbers and your speed. So that's one thing that could get off. You know, as you start playing more, you know, there's things that could get off. We could remeasure you and see how to get back. But so with really good players like PGA Tour players, it's just little tweaks. Like let's just try to give you a little more torque, or a little more vertical, or maybe just, you know, alter that pressure shift a little bit, or your stance got a little too wide. So it can be little tweaks like that. With amateurs, it can be a big whole remake of a lot of bad matchups happening in their swing.
Okay. When the TrackMan came out, it revolutionized teaching as far as what am I talking about?
It helped us understand ball flight laws better. Exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
How much the club face dictated where the ball went, and how much the path dictated.
So Scott, with swing catalysts, are there any like old tropes that have been disproven or maybe reinforced, or what have, with like Mike Adams and all the teachers that have been using this for a long time, what have been some of the revelations with ground force that have come out since swing catalyst has been capturing? I
mean, what traditional golf instruction is, you get into your trail side on the backswing, you get back into your lead side on the downswing. That's not true for everyone. I've seen some teachers call me and say, hey, my plate's broken, this guy's only getting like 50% into his trail side, like there's no pressure I'm like, it can happen. And so there are some players on tour that don't get a whole lot of pressure into their trail side, and that traditional measure of getting into your right side and getting back into your left side doesn't work for everyone. And that's what Mike Adams would call more of a lead post player that keeps the pressure more on the lead side, and this would be like old school Bryson DeChambeau before he went to his new swing. I would say Cameron Champ is another good example of a guy that doesn't get much pressure into the trail side, and that's something you can still produce tons of speed. You can still hit great golf shots from there, and it depends on the person. So I think, you know, the old way of saying you got to get in your trail side on the backswing, and, you know, their old Hogan's things, it was like 50-50, 80-20, 80-20.
Yeah.
That's like the average, but not many people are the average, and you got to figure out where you are. And if you teach the average and you're way over here, then you're going to mess yourself up. So yeah, I think it's tailoring what happens there to what each person's body can do and make sure that it matches.
Okay, so get behind your wheels of steel there, and we'll get going. All right, so this video, this segment of the driving force video that we're doing here, before we hit a shot, Milo, tell us in your idea, what do you do into the ground when so hit a shot first. And then tell us, without analyzing it really, or you can capture it if you want.
Yeah.
But tell us in general, what do you feel when you're in the ground, when you're swinging?
You
killed that golf ball.
That was okay.
That was low and just penetrated. 126 club head speed there. Yeah, so what do you feel into the ground?
So what do I feel into the ground? I feel like as I get ready to go, I have a little trigger left, and then I pressure shift to the right a little bit, and then I feel like I really kind of sit into the ground and then push back this way.
Now, when you sit into the ground, this is something we might talk about more later. Do you feel almost kind of like a trap door, like falling and then like a harsh braking? Or, I mean, nothing looks harsh in your swing, but there's a definite break.
There's a definite, I'm sure that you'll see an unweighting for a second and then a spike in force.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you hit another one, and Scott, capture another one when you're ready. And then we'll get into the analysis of what's going on.
That's really interesting. I mean, if you had to guess, like percentage-wise, how much pressure do you think you maximally get into your trail side on your backswing?
I don't know.
Guess. Take a guess. So think about it like this here would be 0, right? If I did this, this would be 0, and this here would be 100. What would you think if you had to guess? 60. That's really good.
Okay.
He was 67, which is not a lot. I mean, I would say 80 is the average. We got guys like JB Holmes who get 100% into their trail side, and then guys like
I tend to be very centered
to almost left. Yeah, cool, awesome.
And if you look at my motion, I have almost 0 left motion as I come down.
Right.
I'm a baseball player, and I just use my baseball.
Cool. That's really cool. I mean, that matches exactly.
All right, let's capture a really good one. Oh, there it is.
Okay, I hit that one about normal for me.
All right.
That was a good one. All right, so let's hear the analysis, Scott. What does Milo do into the ground?
But as I said before, he's on the left side of our pressure shift continuum. So I would say the least amount we've ever seen is 50%, like where you don't get any more into your trail side than the most we've seen is 100, and I would say kind of the middle of the road would be 80. And so as I said before, your ground reaction forces should match that. So if you were 100% into your trail side, you would need a lot of this horizontal force to get back to your left side, which you don't have a lot of because you don't need it because you're not back that far. You have a lot of torque. So I would say if I put you on that continuum, you're kind of to the left side of center. And so what does that mean? You should be using vertical forces and torque or rotational forces kind of equally, which from the previous swings I saw were pretty much bang on. And it's rare that you find somebody who hits it as well as you do that has a massive mismatch in their ground reaction forces and their pressure shifts. So let's see here. So the pressure shift that time was, and it's interesting, you can see, I don't know if you can see here, Brandon.
Come on over, Milo, you can check it out.
So as you said before, you have that left trigger. Mm-hmm. So this is you right before you take the club away.
Oh, okay, okay. So here's our
that's the pressure up there. Okay. I can make it bigger. So if we talk about pressure, let me go here. So here's the pressure underneath your feet, and you haven't moved yet.
All right, so this is lead side, trail side?
Yeah, lead side, trail side. And if you watch, it shoots right into your lead foot right before the club moves away from the ball, which is your trigger, right? That's what you said. You have that push there. So that's
trigger left. And
so you basically go to 95% into your lead side before the club's even moved. It's just started to move away from the ball, and you're 95%. And then you get going to the trail side, and you're super consistent. And this is something that I've watched you hit, how many balls now? 5 or 6 that I've measured. And everyone's been almost identical in terms of the pressure shift to the trail side.
67 or
yeah. How much you get into your trail side is really a measure of how much you're using each leg to create your speed. And if you're on one swing, and you'll see this with amateurs, like sometimes it'll be 85 on one swing and 65 on the next, and that's just a completely different swing. It's impossible to be consistent when this is really variable, how much you get in your trail side. We measured Tommy Fleetwood a couple years ago at the Players Championship. He hit 5 wedges, 5 7-irons, and 5 drivers, all full swings, and they were all within 1%. So having that consistency, the only tour player we found that's inconsistent in this is Henrik Stenson. So he's about this 60 something with his irons, and he gets to like 85 with his driver, which
he
might
that kind of unique,
which might tell me about why he can't hit driver, right?
He doesn't hit it.
So he's more of a front or left leg dominant player.
Wood?
I don't know. We didn't have
Yeah.
three wood, but
'Cause
three wood, I
that's
imagine.
his famous.
I'll bet he stacks on it
He
more on the
stacks
three
more
wood
on
and
the
hits
three wood.
down on it.
100%. And so that's where, you know, there's a mismatch there, and it's rare that you find that in tour players. But with a guy who really struggles with the club, that might be where you'd find that.
Shuttling through.
Yeah. Okay. And so then what I would look at, I would go back to my other view here where I can see all the forces. And I don't know if you guys can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's tour averages there, the black bands, just because
I know what I'm looking for, but it's hard to
just
see.
because of the glare here, it's hard to see. And yours, the vertical is above the tour average. So it's right at the top of the PGA Tour average for drivers. So I would say your dominant ground reaction force is vertical, and that matches more of a front-sided. And you can see here,
When you say vertical, Scott, like a left leg vertical, lead leg vertical, or
let's see where it comes from. It's just the ground. Yeah, I would say when it ramps up, he's 87% into his lead side. So that tells me that he's mainly using his lead side to produce it.
Yeah.
But
it maximizes when my knees are at maximum flex also, right?
Yeah, and then it causes you to straighten. So like Newton will tell you that forces have to come before motion.
Yep.
And so when you have that feeling of unweighting the ground or unloading, that's right here. Yeah, where that goes negative. So you're kind of squatting down towards the ground.
So talk about that, Scott. It goes negative. What do you mean?
Oh, it goes below his body weight. So
okay.
You told us that you weighed. So when you're at 100% body weight,
I actually weigh like 190 pounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. This thing might need to be recalibrated because it's only saying you're weighing 155. So that's not you. But I mean, relative to your body weight, it's fine. So it goes down. So you only weigh 100 pounds here.
Wow.
So you've unweighted a whole bunch of your mass, and then you push off the ground, and now you weigh 300 here.
Yeah, go to the where he's max into the ground.
Right here.
Okay, so Scott, what is happening between when in that first part of the downswing? What is happening in that unweighting phase? Like where is his weight horizontally traveling, and then also like, is he getting kind of to unweighting and then getting to a spot where he can then like spike it at a certain time? Or
yeah, well, the unweighting is just preparing to, and it happens over a really quick time. So you can see it goes down and comes back up super quick. You'll see older people, you know, it kind of comes down a long time, and that has to do with the efficiency of your nervous system. And I imagine, how old are you, Milo?
40.
Yeah, if we got you 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it might have been even quicker.
For sure.
Yeah, because that's basically called the stretch shorten cycle. So if you think about it, if I drop down really quickly and have to rebound and go up in the air like a NBA player would do, I need a really reactive nervous system to do that. And this is relatively quick for what I've seen, you know, relative to a lot of amateurs, but you know, compared to like Kyle Berkshire, it's not super quick yet. Kyle's 20, whatever he is, 20 something. So, and that's something that you can still create a lot of speed. It just takes a little more time to get there. And that's where I imagine if we looked at your long drive swing, there would be a lot more area under these curves. So there'd be a lot more kind of time to ramp that thing up to big speeds.
Scott, before we've talked about it goes, the downswing goes horizontal, then vertical, then horizontal, then torque, then vertical.
So you can actually see as I'm falling, I'm starting to unwind like this.
Yeah.
And then once I get about squared up, then I bang.
Push up. Yep. So your horizontal force happens super early. This is the peak of your horizontal force right here, which is at the bottom of the tour average. So there isn't a whole lot of it. And it's right at transition, right? And you'll see really long drivers, the club might still be moving back
when they're doing it,
as they're creating that horizontal force, which means they're creating that stretch, which is hard to do with an amateur. Like a lot of amateurs would lose control of that.
Where's his torque happening?
Torque happens.
We kind of went straight to vertical.
Yeah, right there. So torque happens just before left arm parallel, which is good. That's right in the window that we want it, actually at the early side of the window. And you find in long drivers, generally forces happen earlier. They can be too early. So there's a window we want it in, but that's right at the early part of the window, which is fine. And so that's his torque. And so you'll see, and obviously forces happen before motion. So before you see the motion on the screen, so there's his peak torque. And so if I advance it a couple more frames, you're going to see his body's going to start to open up. And so now you're going to see there, the body starts to open up, and now we hit our peak vertical. And so he's pushing into the ground, creating that peak vertical. And what are we going to see next? We're going to see a raising of his center of mass. So his lead leg's going to post up. and you're going to see them go
The
up.
force happens, and then a couple frames later we see
Yeah.
the result.
Well, I mean, that phone will sit there forever until a force happens to it, right? So motion don't happen until forces. But if I measured the force, it would ramp up on the phone before you actually saw the phone move.
Right.
Yep. And that's exactly what, and that's the problem, I would say, with 95% of amateurs that I put on here, like Brendan, we've had this, where your forces are too late.
Yes.
Slow swingers have forces too late, and there's lots of reasons for that. I'm not sure exactly, but one of my hypotheses is that TPI's made early extensions such a cardinal sin in golf that everyone's kind of staying in their posture forever, and those forces don't happen until almost when the ball's done. So,
all right, let's finish the swing here, and then so go from about where it was max
vertical,
vert, and then go through impact. So what's happening there? I know Milo talks about he's through the ball. It feels like he's slinging it and kind of throwing it.
I mean,
left shoulder.
One thing that I do find is so this is your horizontal force, the purple force, and it's the like side to side force. And when it's positive, it means that you're pushing away from the target and the ground is shoving you towards the target. So it's creating that kind of glide or slide toward the target. And obviously what you have to do to create a lot of speed is you have to put the brakes on that horizontal force. And your brakes are a teeny bit late. And I imagine if you're going full speed at it, which we probably will do later, they might move earlier.
Probably.
Because with Kyle Berkshire, one of the, I mean, I always go back to him because he's, you know, obviously the longest hitter, or one of the longest hitters there are right now, and we've had a chance to measure him. And that spike in the braking force here actually matches right up with his vertical force.
Yeah, I know when I go full bore, my front foot's off the ground at impact.
Right, and so that means you will have already brakes.
Earlier.
Yeah, obviously, because your foot's still on the ground and you're pushing into the ground now, creating those brakes, and the ball hasn't been hit yet. So. And the peak of that braking force is a little bit later. So that would be something if we're trying to get a lot more speed, which I'm sure when you try to hit it full out, that'll probably happen for sure. So, and then what happens is now your foot doesn't leave the ground until here, right? Because you pass body weight right there, which means now you're a lot lighter. And this would be right when your foot leaves the ground when you only weigh 50 pounds here. So that means you're pushing on your right foot with 50 pounds, your left foot's not even on the ground hardly anymore. So you're 100% on your right foot. And so you're completely unweighted there because you're in the air. And I imagine that would happen earlier when you go full out. Okay, so this is interesting. So I think, let me know guys if this is what's happening then in Milo's swing. He's going, all right guys, so let's just recap what I think Milo's doing from what we learned. So one thing that Milo's doing as opposed to most people is he's very consistently getting a certain amount of weight, like within 1%, the same 67% of his weight's going into this right side pressure. And he's doing that every time, which makes him consistent. I mean, it's really hard to be consistent when you're variable with the amount of pressure you're sharing between each foot. So
is that something that almost correlates to handicap, how consistently somebody goes away from
I would say it's pretty close. I mean, I haven't seen a tour player that is variable again, except for that one. And it's even within clubs, between clubs. As long as they're hitting a full shot. If they're trying to punch it or they're trying to do something with a shorter club, then it's different. Because we do have Justin Rose hitting 9 irons where he's, not swinging full and just trying to with a controlled club, it'll be different. And generally when you find the more controlled club, the more kind of stacked they stay on their lead side. So Milo's going 67% here, takes it to the top, and then this very interesting part of his swing where then from here to about there, he's getting lighter, right? Yeah, and you'll find that in pretty much everyone who has a lot of vertical force. You have to go down before you can come up, right? It's really hard to create vertical force from a full standing position, so you got to squat down, which we call a preload. And the preload is when he's creating that torque where he thought, he's pushing his lead foot towards the launch monitor, which is shoving his left hip backwards. And Milo, if you step in here for a second, do you feel as though in that part of the swing, it's not so much that you're squatting more, do you feel almost as if like you're trying to lift your feet off of the ground and that kind of brings you down? Or
not necessarily.
What unweighting part of the swing feel like to you?
It's how I am able to grab the ground so I can use it.
Okay.
So for me, there's two different ways you can get pressure left. You can either kind of glide left or you can sink.
Right.
And I'm a sinker because I'm already kind of centered. So then I sink and now I got pressure left so I can use it.
Right.
Other guys are more gliders to get left. And so those are the kind of the two ways that people get their pressure left.
Great.
And you'd have to get a lot more pressure right to be a glider.
Right, so glide.
And you'd need a lot stronger right leg to do that. And that's where, you know, we do some assessments now on how each leg works biomechanically. And, you know, if you have a really strong right leg, you can get into it and use it. But if you don't, then you probably don't want to do that. You want to use both legs.
Left foot jumper.
Yeah. Perfect.
So from there, once he's unweighted, Scott, he then torques, but not like a ridiculous spin torque,
No.
but he does start to torque some, right?
Well, and that's the difference between kinematics and kinetics. So I've had a lot of people I've had on like an AMM system, and they have, you know, we had that Jazz Janata Wadawana on there, and he had the highest pelvis angular velocity we've ever measured, like way higher than Rory McIlroy. And I assumed that he would have a ton of torque on the plate because that's all rotation. But it's possible to be a kinematic rotator without actually ripping into the ground and pushing. And so,
rotate and lift your feet up at the same time.
Totally, yeah. And so, when I first measured him when he was a younger kid, he had tons of kinematic rotation and not a lot of torque. And now he's been working with Pete Cowan quite a bit, and he's playing a lot better. Now he has tons of torque on the ground. Right. I imagine he's not quite as open as he used to be. So, and that's the thing that a lot of people are working on, getting open to it and open to it and open to it. And if you do it without actually ripping into the ground, it might actually cost you some speed and accuracy.
Yeah, if you're opening and it's not actually affecting how the club moves,
sure,
it doesn't do any good.
And it's not putting, you know, force into the system.
Nothing.
Yeah. So that's something that, you know, just because somebody's way open doesn't mean they have tons of torque.
So for Milo, he's here, he's squatting, which is helping him unweight.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of doing this as he's doing that, almost simultaneously, right?
And that's where he creates his torque. And then as soon as that's done,
catches the ground almost.
And then goes up.
And then goes this way.
Yeah.
And then coming into impact, what's happening like from here to there?
I mean, with
it's
this,
just a continuation of that kind of push.
Yeah, and right coming into impact is where he starts to spike that braking force, where you're pushing towards the target with your left foot.
Yeah, I'm pushing this way, and you can actually watch my center. My body starts to move back away.
Yeah, and I imagine when you go full out at it, that would happen earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see that, Milo. Let's hit one now. That's a little harder.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
that was 126 miles an hour plus that speed.
You might need to. I don't know how you want to ramp it up to that, or just.
I'll go right after it.
All right.
I don't know what I got in the tank, but we'll see.
So if you were to guess, Scott, about what would happen in Milo's swing when it's like the really hard one, you would say that jump happens a little earlier even?
Well, the jump actually is well timed in his, or the vertical force is well timed in his previous swing. Yeah. But it's that braking force off your lead side, which I imagine would move earlier and be closer.
Oh, that's right, because he goes up, and then he kind of changes the trajectory of the jump force.
Yeah, like if you saw the vector coming out of his foot.
Yeah. So it's going where the club, so wherever the club is, I'm kind of offsetting.
Right.
Yeah, we're saying about the vector line of the force.
Yeah. So like if it goes straight up, it means he's jumping, but if it goes up and backwards, it means he's jumping and braking. And as the club moves faster, obviously there's less time, and that's going to have to go up and back sooner.
Go slow-mo through impact for me.
Okay.
So these vector lines, folks, like on certain systems, like they show like where the force is coming. So if you were to do that without the club in your hand, Milo. Yeah, just drop the club for a second. So the force, go to like the max vertical force into the ground.
Max vertical is probably like right here.
And this would be pushing straight up like that, kind of.
In his normal swing, but I think as he gets going full speed, then that'll start like pointing back more.
So you're
going to see my foot go.
Yeah. So go face on to the camera for a second. So Scott, you're saying he would, as you go through from max vertical to finish, Scott, it would be going from here to, and then he'd be changing it there.
Well, that's what he does in his slower speed swing, your normal golf swing. But I would say that in his, because the club's moving so fast, it will go up and back earlier.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if it's just going to go up and then shift back. Milo, it might just go.
This force into the ground is just staying opposite of where the club's going.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's just synced up to the golf club. So I'm stabilizing myself.
Right. And I think when the clubs are moving faster, there's less time. You gotta make it happen earlier.
It's going to happen faster and sooner.
Makes sense.
All right, let's see a big one.
Okay. After
all that analysis,
all that talking,
I couldn't even move after.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Go. I got to get moving.
There you go. Give us some Berkshire.
Well, that was faster. 179 ball there.
What was the club? 127.
127. And I definitely saw in my eye, I mean, I saw you actually came off the plate.
Yeah, the foot moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it might take a while. You're not quite the Tesla that you used to be.
No,
It takes a little longer to get to full speed.
it took me 100 balls the other day.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, I wouldn't even warm up. I just go to the first tee and whack it, and off we go. And
Yeah, now it's like a grizzled old pitcher. It takes me like 3 hours before I'm good.
My warm-up stopped once I had kids. I mean, time for that garbage. Go play golf.
Should I hit another one?
I mean, the braking force was massive there.
Well, yeah, let's just look at that one, because that one was
1 mile an hour faster, and
was faster. 1 mile an hour, yeah, but it was.
But your
4
foot
miles an hour
still wasn't
faster
off
on
the ground at impact. So that's where I think you're still warming it up a bit.
it was probably just after.
Your club is probably almost parallel to the ground on the way through when the foot leaves the ground. So, I mean, the forces all went up there, and the braking force goes way up, but it's late again. It's back where it was previously too. So
We'll give it one more.
yeah, no, I mean, I think it'll take a little more than that even. I mean. What is your long drive club speed?
Well, it's a bigger club, 135.
Okay.
This is only a 44-inch driver, so I slowed down on that one. Lost my balance.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that one. This is a good part about non-live TV.
Beyond ground force, Milo, what are your cues when you want to hit it further?
Make everything move faster.
Okay, so as far as the backswing, the loading, the drop, everything.
Yeah, I just try to do it all bigger and faster. Got to speed up the backswing.
Yeah.
That's the hard part for me, because I have my game speed that's just smooth, and it's smooth goes about 125, which is fast, but
181, that was faster. 181 ball, 129 club.
There you go.
That's
Do
good.
you,
Right in the center.
Because I mean, a lot of people are talking about now to get more speed, it's increasing the length of your hand path. So trying to get higher
and everything bigger.
Everything
and
bigger,
faster
and bigger.
Faster away. Yeah.
I'm not very flexible, so I can only turn as much as I can.
Right.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, what did you see in the forces in that one as it's loading up?
I mean, the magnitude of the forces go up. Interesting to me too is to see when you start to swing faster, like which force really increases.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. Your torque actually came down a little bit for the faster, so you're a little less rotary
And more.
vertical. Yeah. Does that make sense to kind of what you feel?
That's kind of what I felt.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when I'm trying to hit it really straight, I don't try to push up very much.
Right.
I'm just trying to stay in.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the swing's going to be faster, so the stabilizing forces have to be greater.
Yeah. And you get more into your trail side. So you're 83% of your trail side, which gives you more horizontal force to get back.
Rather than 67.
Rather than 67. And that's where, I mean, I've yet to see, we call a somebody who has all three forces within the tour average or above, like a trifecta, the rare trifecta. We haven't seen too many of them on tour, but every long drive guy I've seen has it. It's like, I think it's impossible to be a long drive guy without
Well, they have everything. Yeah.
trying to max them all out.
They're
Yeah.
getting everything.
So you are like with your normal swing, you don't have much horizontal push.
Yeah, I'm pretty rotary, just
yeah.
pretty centered.
And you get a little less rotary, it looks like. Well, in terms of the torque off the ground.
So there's a little more linear force.
Yeah, and you're going a little more side to side. So, and I imagine I'm sure that torque would start coming back up when you got up to the 130 something range.
Probably.
I'm sure those would all get up to the tour average because that's what.
What is it that Milo does into the ground that regular golfers can? Because the thing that I get confused at listening to Swing Catalyst stuff is, hey, everyone's different. Everyone does something differently. Find what's good for you. But what can regular golfers take from what Milo does into the ground to make them better?
Well, again, you'd have to assess, and I do a lot of work with a guy named John Dunnigan in Philadelphia, and he says the best golf teacher ever is Goldilocks. And so I would have golfers hit shots and try to get like 100% into their trail side, try to get like 50% or hardly any, then try to go somewhere in the middle. So it's like too hot, too cold, and see which one produces the best ball flight, see how you hit it best. And I would say, Milo, you'd be more towards the left foot side, right? Getting less pressure into the trail side, but you'd hit it better from there.
That's why I hit.
That's why you stay there. Yeah, for sure. And so I think that would be something that a golfer could do at home. When you go to the driving range, hit one where you try to literally like lift your lead foot off the ground and get 100% in your trail side and see what happens with it. If you start smashing it, then cool, let's do that. If you start shanking it, then okay, maybe we want to stay a little more centered or more on the left side.
Yeah, like hitting those horrible shots from different positions is actually really good feedback for you.
Really good feedback, because then you know if the ball starts doing that on the course, oh, I'm just getting too much into my trail side, I need to. And so to me, that's a good way to practice. That's a good way to assess yourself, to see what's best for you. And so if you find you hit it best off your left, or staying more stacked on your left side, you got to work on vertical forces. You got to work on going up.
Yeah, let's talk about that for just a minute, because one of the things you said, a huge difference between amateurs and really good players, is the matchups.
Yeah.
So how can someone without a swing catalyst or whatever see that, okay, here's a telltale sign that something is not matched up?
That's tough. I mean, if you're hitting shitty shots, most likely there's something.
Falling off balance.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, and that's where, you know, I've heard a lot of top golf teachers say that I'm a human launch monitor. Like, I've watched enough shots and looked at the data enough times to say, hey, like, I know when a ball does that, your path was this, your face was that. And I think that's possible to be a human launch monitor. I don't think it's ever going to be possible to be a human force plate or ground reaction force plate. I've seen thousands and thousands of swings on this plate, and I still get surprised. I'm like, holy cow, that's what that is? Like, I wouldn't have guessed that. Because like, you can't see forces with your eye.
Top golf coach send you a text message, you told me sometimes, a video of somebody swing, like, what do you think they're doing into the ground? Like, I could have done it.
There's absolutely no way you can guess. I mean, I think that's one of the best sales pitches for this type of technology is you can't see this with your eye. You can't see forces with your eye. You need to measure them. And if you try to guess, and I have a whole bunch of slides in my educational, well, I'll do that. I'll put up a picture of somebody. I'll say, guess how much pressure's in their trail side. And they might look like this, like Matt Wolf, right?
Yeah.
But he's pushing like heck through this toe here. And so he's 50-50, where if you just looked at him, you're like, he's got to be 80% into his trail side. And that it's happened to me enough times now that I don't guess, because I've been wrong.
Milo, what is your telltale sign that somebody has a really poor matchup in how they're using their golf swing and the forces in their golf swing?
They can't hit it solid, and they can't hit it straight.
Okay. That's pretty universal that everybody, are you saying like everybody that hits it pretty solid has bad, a matchup is one of the top things?
They match it right.
Yeah.
People who hit it well match what they do.
Sure. And then you have to decide if somebody does have a mismatch, which way is the mismatch? Like, golf instruction is not easy. It's a hard game.
Yep.
And I think just getting people closer though to using their body, because I always tell, you know, if somebody comes to me and, you know, they're not using, say they want to be more into their trail side, but their right leg doesn't work so well. The cure to that is going to the gym. Like, you got to go to the gym and you got to work on that. And how many people are actually going to do that?
Right.
I mean, most people
be like that, then you're gonna have to learn to use the left leg.
Yeah. So that's your option, right? Your option is go to the gym and work on this, and then your question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to play well now, or do I want to play well later? Yeah. And I always tell people, I've measured PGA Tour players who don't use their right leg much. They stay on their left side and they play really well. They hit great golf shots. Yeah,
the longest players
100%, just because they're doing what matches their body really well. And a lot of this stuff obviously came from Mike Adams' work. He's the first person that really showed me, you know, to assess your body and try to match up what your body does well right now. And I think, I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know the answer. If you're teaching a guy who plays Saturday and he comes see you on Friday, and he plays Saturday every day, you probably just want to match up what he's doing, because he's not going to go to the gym every day.
You teach him how to chip and putt.
Sure. Whereas, you know, if you have, I'm working with a lot of people who have academies where kids come to see them at the start of their high school career and they're there for 4 years, and they're working on the range every day. They're in the gym every day. Then maybe you could, you know, have them working on, you know, getting more.
Well, we're gonna talk about how you guys can match up your swing better on your own, using some of the info that we're getting today in a video that's coming up soon. So stay tuned.